Hello, everyone. Carl Steinbeck here on this Sunday night in December. Haven't been on for a while. I last had the Honorable Ruth Markell on and talking about the Daniel Markell case in Florida with the Adelsons being the instigators behind it all. But tonight, I want to have something different. I will circle back and talk more about that case in Florida, but I wanted to cover something different that's been going on here. A lot of you are probably already following it. And I have not followed much of all of it this past week. It's been going on for weeks, so I'm a little bit late to the show here on covering this case, but I did want to at least cover the opening and closings, the openings for both the prosecution and defense, because as I believe, you really can win your case in the opening if you package it well, along with your voir dire questions. You can really tee that up for success. So some people ask, well, what's more important, the jury selection process, the opening, or the closings? I think it all is sort of like a seamless network of things you have to accomplish properly and have it all gelled together to really make a successful outcome in your case. And so I think that just covering the openings here, I can give you my comments on it, tell you what I think, what the strengths are from each side. From an advocacy standpoint, what I think is good, bad, and maybe not so great on the different attorneys that are doing their openings, which I consider more of an argument a lot of times than an actual statement. And a lot of attorneys do try to make it more argumentative than it is just a bland statement to try to get some more emotional connection with the jury. So let's see how these attorneys do. I am going to cover it from the trial channel, which has been covering this one and breaking it down very good. So if you don't want to hear my commentary and don't want to have me stopping this, then go right to the trial channel to watch these opening statements. And otherwise, if you do want to hear commentary and also discussions here, if you guys have some insights, I can stop and post those as well, or some questions. So let's go ahead and jump on in to the trial channel. So that's Brian Walshe right there. He was 49, and his wife at the time, before she was disappeared, was 39. They had 3 kids, 3 boys, 2, 4, and 6. And that's about all I'm going to say here. This is in Massachusetts. We do have a number of the same characters involved from Norfolk, the county of Norfolk there in Massachusetts, outside of Boston area. So it's remains to be seen how much that carryover from the corrupt actions we saw in the Karen Reed case that spill over into this one. I don't think it's going to be too much. We do have Trooper Proctor that was apparently the lead investigator in this one, but they have so much digital evidence against this guy. I think that's the thing that really is going to be the thing that cooks him on this one. So let's go ahead and jump right on in. I'm going to switch this to better full screen image there. There's also a split screen option thing they talked about on StreamYard. That's what I used for live streaming this. And StreamYard gave an option for landscape or portrait. So maybe if you have a phone, you want to jump to the another channel. I guess there's 2 live streams going on at the same time on YouTube. So if it looks different on your phone than what you're used to, check it out on this channel to see the different format. So here we go.
Jurors, I know that you will try this case according to the oath that you took this morning. In that oath, you promised you would well and truly try the issues between the Commonwealth and the defendant according to the evidence and the law. If you follow that oath, approach this case with an open mind and make your decisions fairly, without prejudice or bias or sympathy for anyone, then you will arrive at a just and fair verdict. It's now time for the opening statements. And you will find that there are customs in the law, many customs in the law that dictate how the case plays out. And the first custom I'll alert you to is that the Commonwealth opens the case first. ADA Connor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, may it please the court?
It does.
On January 4th, 2023, Teresa Marchese returned to work after New Year's holiday. She works at Tishman Speyer, and she is the Director of Human Capital Management. That is to say that she's the Director of Human Resources. And Tishman Speyer is a real estate management company, but it's a global real estate management company. It has buildings all over the world. And this office that Ms. Marchese works in is in Washington, D.C. When she returned to her office in Washington, D.C. that morning, she was alerted that one of her coworkers' husbands was trying to find her coworker. The coworker was Anna Walsh, and her husband is Brian Walsh. Teresa Marchese knew Anna Walsh because she hired her. She hired her in February 2022 to work at the Washington, D.C. office of Tishman Speyer and to manage some of those buildings in Washington, D.C. She also knew that Anna Walsh commuted from Cohasset to Washington to work at Tishman Speyer, and that her husband, Ryan, and her 3 children were still in Cohasset at this time. She also knew where Anna Walsh lived in Washington, D.C. Anna Walsh had bought a townhouse right near where Teresa Marchese lives in Washington. So when she heard that Brian Walsh was looking for Anna, she got concerned. And she spoke to her boss, Jeff Shaw. And the two of them went into a conference room and called Brian Walsh. Brian was calm, and he said that on January 1st, Anna left their Cohasset home for a work emergency and had to fly back to Washington, D.C. And he hasn't spoken to her since then. This is the longest they've ever gone without speaking. So Teresa Marchese went and drove to Anna Walsh's townhouse. She took another employee with her, and on the way there, she had another conversation with Brian Walsh. Brian was calm, and he gave her the combination to the garage so Ms. Marchese could get into the building. Ms. Marchese got there. She was able to look in the windows. Nothing was broken. Nothing was out of order. She got into the garage, and she found some cardboard boxes that had yet to be unpacked, some car seats, no car, no Anna Walsh. Now, the door from the garage to the home, that was locked, so she couldn't get inside.
All right, this come across sort of flat. I mean, this is a murder case. Anna Walsh, her body's not been found. Being the mother of 3 young kids like that, I think it's good to go chronology on an opening, but I think it's important also to say what the case is about. This is a case of a mother that's disappeared. What's triggered right before that made this thing were in the mind of the defendant where he had some conflicts with her. What were the conflicts? We're going to see that coming up here. So there's not really a great opening, I would say, so far. He's doing a chronology, but you got to sort of describe more the violence involving this. And granted, they don't have the body yet, but they found some other instruments that look like it was a pretty gruesome act that happened to Anna.
So Ms. Marchese called Mr. Walsh back again, and she told him that she was
all this locations and who's saying what to whom and all that. I mean, it would be nice if they had like a picture to flash up on the screen. I think demonstratives and visuals are very important to show in an opening as well, so setting the scene.
going to loop into this conversation Tishman Speyer's global head of security, who also works in Washington, D.C. His name is Hugh Dunleavy. He's a retired Secret Service agent. Mr. Walsh is calm. Mr. Dunleavy is looped into this conversation on the phone, and Mr. Walsh's demeanor changes. He becomes very upset. Mr. Dunleavy calms him down, asks him a series of questions, and Mr. Walsh repeats. Anna left the home in Cohasset on January 1st to come to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Mr. Dunleavy follows up. Have you called the police? What is the local police department in your town? You live in Cohasset. You need to call the police. The call ends. Mr. Dunleavy works with the Washington police and helps facilitate them getting into the home in Washington, D.C., and Anna is not there. He also calls the Cohasset police just before noon on January 4th. And he reports Anna missing. Hugh Dunleavy from Washington, D.C.
Let me try.
calls the Cohasset police, and that is the first time Anna Walshe has been reported missing.
Sorry, trying to get the volume up here. Some stuff. 1 second. Stand by.
To the police. Working the hospitality industry by working in hotels in Washington and Massachusetts. And that she transitioned to real estate. She got the opportunity to work for Jem Newton, who had his own real estate company. She actually wound up running that company for him. That was until February 2022, where she got what Brian Walshe referred to as a dream job, where she got to work for Titian Spire, and she would make more money than she had ever made before in her career. She had purchased a townhouse in Washington, D.C., and she was expecting to have her family come with her. However, Brian and the children had stayed in Massachusetts. And the reason is that Brian had previously pled guilty to a count of fraud in the Boston Federal District Courthouse, but he hadn't been sentenced yet. Now, he was accused of owing over $400,000 of restitution. At this point in time, Anna was the breadwinner for the family, and she had moved to D.C. She was still commuting back and forth, but looking to have the family join her in D.C. and Brian too. However, when she bought the townhouse, she did this with the aid of a person by a real estate agent by the name of William Fastow. She was introduced to Mr. Fastow from her former boss, Jim Newton. Mr. Fastow will testify, and he will tell you that they became friends, and that friendship became romantic. And that carried on into November of 2022, when Anna needed to go visit her mother, who was sick back in Belgrade, Serbia. Anna flew to Dublin, Ireland, the weekend of Thanksgiving, and Mr. Fastow joined her for that weekend. She then flew and visited her sick mother in Serbia, and then would return back to the United States. Mr. Fastow, after Dublin, would go back to Washington, D.C. But Anna missed Thanksgiving with Brian and the children.
So right there, you have the motive. She's already cutting and running in the marriage. He's got that federal conviction, and he's awaiting sentencing, which begs the question: why is he out? Why isn't he sentenced already, or in confinement pending sentence? So this is really a mark on the justice system there, the federal justice system in Massachusetts, that he's got $400,000 fraud sentence hanging over his head, and this guy is still out walking the streets. So I know it'd still be alive right now if he'd have been held over after he was convicted and awaiting sentencing. So it's really, really upsetting to see that.
And then on Christmas Eve that same year, Anna went out to dinner with Mr. Fastow. They went out to dinner in Athens with another couple. And she stayed the night. And she was supposed to get a flight out on Christmas Day. But she couldn't get a flight. So she had to drive up from Washington, D.C. to Cohasset. And she missed Christmas Eve and most of Christmas Day with Brian. She would fly back to Washington, D.C. And on December 29th, she would go to dinner with one of her friends who will testify before you. And that friend will say that she was uncharacteristically tired and emotional. You'll also hear from a series of witnesses that dealt with Anna Walshe right before New Year's. She returned back to Cohasset on December 30th, and she was going to stay with the family until January 3rd. You'll hear how she went to a bar class, B-A-R-R-E, It's an intensive ballet class. You'll hear from the instructor who will say that she did exceedingly well in that class. A person who was with her in a nail salon will testify. She got her nails done on New Year's Eve. And Mr. Mutlu will testify. He went over to the Walsh family residence on New Year's Eve for dinner. 3 adults were there. It was Mr. Mutlu, Brian, and Anna. He got there around 8:30. He brought some snacks for the kids. Actually got to play with the oldest child. And he spent the night talking to his friends. He'd characterize them as jovial. They shared champagne. They weren't drunk. They were enjoying the new year. They actually signed the champagne box. And you'll see that, where they were looking forward to the new year. Brian cooked. Brian was attentive. Brian also said to Mr. Mutlu that night that he had lost his phone, it had been misplaced, but he had felt free as a result of it. Mr. Mutlu left that home on New Year's Day at 1:30 a.m. And there was no mention of a work emergency in Washington, D.C. that would require Anna to fly out or leave the family home at 6 or 7 a.m. that day. Now on January 4th,
Well, she's in the real estate business as an executive. So, what kind of emergency would you have where you have to fly out on short notice like that?
after Hugh Dunleavy had called the Cohasset Police Department, the Cohasset Police Department dispatched Officer Greg Lawrence to go speak to Mr. Walsh at his home. Officer Lawrence went. He was went outside by Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh informed Officer Lawrence that Anna had left on January 1st, had taken a Uber or Lyft to Logan Airport to fly out to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Gave her a phone number for Anna Walsh, described her as 5'2", that she was 39 years old, approximately 115 pounds. She hadn't heard her. Officer Lawrence went back to the Cohasset Police Department, worked with other Cohasset police officers, trying to find any connection to Uber or Lyft or local taxi cabs. Cohasset police would then begin a process of pinging on his phone. You're going to get to see the records from that, but essentially the process involves the cell phone carrier, in this case Verizon, sending a signal onto the phone to try and locate. And the Verizon records will show that the last time that phone that belonged to Anna Walsh interacted with the network was shortly after 3 a.m. on January 2nd. And when it did so, it was in the area of the Walsh home. That same day, Cohasset Police also tasked Detective Schmidt with investigating this case. He and Officer Lawrence would go back to the Walsh family residence at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway and interview Brian Walsh. And he recorded it. You get to hear the recording. And Brian will talk about how Anna was commuting back and forth from Cohasset to Washington for work, how there were some issues with his federal case, and how Mr. Mutlu had come over for dinner that night on New Year's Eve, and how Anna had to leave between 6 and 7 on January 1st. He also, in that interview, described what Anna was wearing when she left the home. Blue-gray hunter boots, a black jacket, and an Hermes watch. So Sergeant Smith will testify before you, and he will tell you that he worked on this missing person investigation and called in additional resources to help. On the 5th, he had his own department do a search of the woods near the family home. On the 6th, he called in a task force made of several
So they waited that many days. That's shocking.
different police
Unbelievable.
departments to do further searching of the woods in and around the Walsh family home. Contacted the state police to use their resources. He also got the opportunity
I mean, a mother's missing and they wait that many days to start searching woods nearby. This is
to speak
unacceptable.
to Mr. Walsh on January 5th, January 7th, and January 8th. And when he did those interviews, he was accompanied by detectives from the state police. And those interviews were recorded. You'll get to hear those. You'll get to hear those interviews. And Mr. Walsh, during those interviews, will explain that he and Anna were happily married. He had no knowledge of any extramarital affair. That Anna had her dream job. That it was taking care of the family. And conversely, he didn't take a salary this year out of his company that was a consulting company. He told the police that he owed over $400,000 in restitution on his federal matter. That this case was causing stress on his marriage. That he might have to go to jail. He said that they were very happy and that the biggest problem was that they were apart.
Really? So the fact that he's busted by the feds, facing years in prison, federal prison, and she's got to raise 3 little boys by herself, that's not going to cause problems? And the biggest problem is that they're apart? No, the biggest problem, I think, is the fact that you're about to be facing years behind bars.
Brian also told the police that Anna's job had caused her to miss Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with her family. And that Anna traveling to visit her sick mom caused her to miss Thanksgiving with the family. And that he did not want to have an argument with Anna about missing another holiday on January 1st. He had a discussion with her about Christmas Day. He was concerned that by him looking around trying to find her, that she would embarrass her. So he tells the police, I didn't want to have an argument. So I understood she was going to come back, and she left for that emergency at work. You'll also have access to financial records that will show that Anna Walsh had approximately $200,000 in accounts at Fidelity, and that there was over $1 million in life insurance in Anna Walsh, and that Brian Walsh was the beneficiary of those policies.
There you go. Massive motive.
And in addition to the Cohasset police, the Massachusetts State Police also worked with them on trying to find Anna. You're going to hear from 2 troopers in particular, Trooper Nicholas Torino and Trooper Connor Keith. They are digital forensic specialists. They have special training in examining computers, tablets, phones. And in this matter, they had the opportunity to examine a MacBook, iPads, and cell phones that were at the Walsh house. And they will explain that on Christmas Day, when Anna had missed Christmas Eve and was, after spending the evening with Mr. Passow, and was driving up from Washington, D.C., the cell phone that Brian Walsh.
All right, this guy is not looking and reading from a script, which is good in your opening, but he's really slow and he's just making it bogged down and boring. So this should be really riveting in what he's describing. Some of these details on who contacted who and whatever. You can say them faster, so he has a sort of the same speed throughout the whole thing, and that's what I think is losing the jury from really grabbing the sensational story of how this thing unfolded, where this guy is not even concerned about looking for his wife, and you can make a lot of these conclusions and say them in your opening, and he's just sort of like not really leading them to any of those kind of conclusions. So it's just sort of like, here's what happened, and he's not letting the jury understand anything that the police were uncovering in their conclusions as it's being unraveling from their investigation. So anyway, just sort of flat, disappointing to see, but it's not going to affect the underlying evidence. But you can just be a lot stronger as a prosecutor than what this guy's showing. He doesn't have a lot of fire in his belly, doesn't have a lot of passion, and he needs to ramp it up a lot.
What you saying? Looked up Mr. Fastow on the internet.
Thankfully, these things don't go on longer than the 52 minutes here. So between the prosecution and defense, they have really short opening statements, which I think is a good thing. You don't need to have 2-hour openings, an hour and a half opening, anything like that. on any particular case. You need to make it easy for the jury to digest.
And that on December 27th, a MacBook that used the Apple ID for Brian Walsh between 8:30 and 9 o'clock researched best strategies to divorce for a man, best state to divorce for a man, Washington, D.C. divorce laws. On December 29th, Brian Walsh's cell phone was researching buildings that Anna Walsh managed petitioners filed and emergencies she had handled for them in the past. Trooper Guarino will also explain to you the internet history of that MacBook that had Brian Walsh's Apple ID beginning on January 1st. At 4:54 a.m., the MacBook searched best way to dispose of a body. And then with a similar website.
Very damning.
At 6:24 a.m., same day, the same device, searched how long for someone to missing to inherit. How long missing to be dead? Can you throw away body
Right
parts?
there.
Later on that morning, on January 1st at 9:33 a.m., the MacBook went
Body
to
parts. What gruesome.
search how long does DNA last? And then an article. Is it possible to clean DNA off a knife? 30 minutes later, the MacBook researched disposal of a cell phone. At 10:28 a.m., the MacBook researched, I am the user of my wife's credit card. She is missing. And again, on January 1st, at 11:28 a.m., it searched.
So he already knew she was missing that soon in the morning. Wow. This is really damning information. I mean, this is dynamite evidence for a prosecutor to have. And if I was a prosecutor, I'd be flashing that up on a screen for the jury to see.
Best way to dispose of body parts after a murder.
Okay, right there. That is the most damning thing right there. This is gonna fry this guy. Best way to dispose of body parts after a murder. That right there is a confession, folks. That's what I'd be arguing. This is the confession. There's no other excuse he can come up with other than the fact that she was murdered, and he's doing this the same day she was murdered. So that tells you it was done based on these kind of search questions he's doing on the internet. She was killed early that morning on January 1st.
Trooper Guarino will explain in numerous websites.
This is the same trooper that's in the Karen Reed case. And he was the one that did testimony about the different bars and whatnot, some digital evidences in that case as well. He wasn't being exposed for any kind of corrupt actions like the other folks were, like Buchanan and Trooper Proctor. So anyway, it's just really odd that you have these same folks involved now in this case. Some of the same ones anyway.
Sites and searches done by the MacBook in the morning and early afternoon on January 1st. And that these websites were about cleaning blood with ammonia, bleach, and hydrogen peroxide. Websites visited included those as whether it is better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash.
Crime scene. There you go. That's another smoking gun indicator that he murdered her. I mean, there's no doubt this guy right here with this kind of evidence. What's he going to say? Someone stole his phone and they're the ones that killed Anna. I don't think so. But anyway, this is extremely strong case, overwhelming case with this kind of evidence.
One site was entitled, "You want to get away with murder? Use a special deterrent." This type of activity on the MacBook continued into January 2nd, when it looked up, how long does Lowe's keep security footage? How to saw a body. How to dismember a body. Can you be charged with murder without a body?
There you go.
Can you?
I mean, this is so damning. Gosh, how are people this stupid? They're living very successful lives from the economic standpoint. I don't know what his education level was. I know she had a bachelor's overseas in Serbia, bachelor's equivalent. So this is really, really, helpful to the prosecution, but it shows the level of not only depravity, but the way way she was apparently murdered, but also him searching these questions out. And I mean, it seems like there's so many of these cases where internet searchers just really sink a defendant on a case. So this is another one example right here. And so, yeah, he had no reason. I think you're trying to say here he had no reason to hide the body if she died naturally. Yeah. So that's true. He did plead to guilty to counts 2 and 3, which was just had to do with disposing improperly, illegally of a body, as well as lying to the police. Charges along those lines. So let's see what is brought out here in the openings for that, though.
Identify a body with broken teeth. The math book also visited websites for apartment complexes in Brockton and Chelsea. One in particular, Chatham West in Brockton. Brian Walsh told investigators that his phone, which was an iPhone 13 mini, had been misplaced and not found until the afternoon of January 2nd, 2023.
How
When
convenient.
investigators examined that phone, they learned that it had been connected to a power source. It had been unlocked 4 times by either using the face or the passcode. Investigators will also tell you that the location data from that phone showed that it remained in the Walsh residence until the afternoon of January 2nd, 2023. However, there was another phone in the Walsh residence, an iPhone SE, which belonged to one of the children. When investigators examined the location data from that phone, they found that on January 1st, the phone traveled to a Walgreens in Cohasset, then to a liquor store nearby the defendant's mother's home, an apartment complex in Swampscott, to a CVS in Danvers, to a Lowe's in Danvers, and to a Stop and Shop in Swampscott. You will see the surveillance video from those stores. You'll see the video from Walgreens, where a white man with dark hair using a credit card buys Band-Aids and antibiotics. You'll see on the surveillance video at the CVS in Danvers that a white man with dark hair, now wearing a mask, buys hydrogen peroxide using cash. You'll see the surveillance video from the Stop and Shop in Swampscott, where a white man then goes buys ammonia with cash. And you'll see the surveillance video from the Lowe's in Danvers, where a white man wearing a mask and dark hair buys several items that cost more than $400 using cash, including a Tyvek suit and cutting instruments such as shears, snips, and a hacksaw.
Tyvek suit is what I think they're trying to say here on the closed caption.
The investigators will explain how the cell phone location data from the iPhone SE shows that it went to a Home Goods in the morning of January 2nd, and that Brian's iPhone 13 mini went to a Home Depot in Rockland in the afternoon of January 2nd. You will see the surveillance videos from those stores. You'll see a white man with dark hair at Home Goods buying scented candles and area rugs. And you'll see a white man with dark hair at the Home Depot buying more cleaning supplies. 20 pounds of baking soda, mop, buckets, and a hatchet.
Yeah.
Investigators will also explain to you that Brian Walsh's cell phone on January 3rd was located near apartment complexes in Gwinnett. You'll see the surveillance videos from some of the apartment complexes, including one at Chatham West. You'll see someone going to the dumpster and then leaving. The investigators will also tell you that on January 5th, Brian Walsh's father was in the area of dumpsters and a trash compactor by his mother's apartment complex in Swansea, and that this was before he was interviewed by Detective Schmidt later that night. On January 9th, the police went to those dumpsters and they took that trash compactor and that dumpster to a facility in Peavey where they searched the contents of both. And they found an Air Mary's watch, blue-gray Hunter boots, a black coat, a COVID vaccination card with Anna Walsh's name on, rugs, a Tyvek suit, a hammer, shears, snips, a hatchet, and a hacksaw. The police will tell you that these items were packaged and brought back to a laboratory, and they were brought there for examination. And how some of these items were examined for DNA. And the DNA was compared to samples they had from Anna and Ronnie. Scientists from the state DNA lab will identify DNA of Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh on a Tyvek suit. They'll explain that Anna Walsh's DNA was found from items in the dumpster, including drugs, the hatchet, and the hacksaw. Jem Mutlu said goodbye to Anna Walsh about 1:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. When he left, she was home, she was alive, she was with her husband. No one has seen her since her husband said she left on January 1st. She has not accessed her finances, her email, her phone has made no calls, and no one has found her body. During this case, we ask two things. The first is that you keep an open mind. Do not rush to judgment, but instead, see how all the evidence fits together. Pay careful attention to the timing of certain events. And second, use your common sense. Don't leave it home. Bring it with you here as you make your examination of every piece of it. And at the end of this trial, we will speak to you one more time. Because at that time, we will ask that you find the defendant guilty of murdering his wife with deliberate premeditation. Thank you.
Yeah, that guy's really flat. I'm surprised they gave him a murder case being that flat.
Lydia Connor. Trish, why don't you take a break and stand up, shake a leg?
Yeah, because that opening was that bad. You need to get some fresh air, get some blood circulating. Disappointing to see, but it's not going to affect the case, thankfully. We got through that in about
And when you're comfortable
25
and
minutes.
regain your focus, you may be seated. Now we'll hear from the defense for the opening statements. Attorney Tipton.
Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, that's true.
Brian Walsh. Lied to the police. Lied to him on January 4th, lied to him on January 5th. Lied to him on January 7th. Brian Walsh went to Lowe's and bought tools. Brian Walsh went to Home Depot and bought tools. Brian Walsh, beginning about 4:54 a.m.
Okay, you guys seen this kind of pacing? What's that remind you of? Have you seen the Kieran Reed trial? That was what Hank Brennan did as his opening statement. He walked, paced forth and back in front of the jury like this guy's doing. When I see that, automatically I'm thinking, does it clear sign that this defense counsel knows his client's going down. He's got nothing to work with, and he's just trying to say something and think about how to avoid all the incriminating information. He's not reading off of a script, which is, I think, a automatic requirement. You got to have some kind of connection with the jury. But when you're pacing forth and back like that, guess what? You're not making eye contact with the jury very much, and so by doing that, you're not able to get that connection, and they're not going to trust you as much. So, that's what I'm saying. His body language is such that he knows he can't be trusted in what he's saying because the evidence is so damning.
Began a frantic and tragic search that you will hear about. You'll hear the evidence of that. You will hear evidence that those searches evolved from how best to dispose of body to even darker subject matter. As he wrestled with the fact that Anna Walshe was dead.
Murdered, more like it.
That evidence that you will hear will be hard to understand, but it is true. On January 1st of 2023, Jim Lutlow left the family home of Brian and Anna Walshe sometime between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. Anna and Brian Walshe continued to celebrate the news.
This guy at least has passion that the prosecutor didn't have, so he's doing good in that regard. He just doesn't have a lot to work with, and having your arms crossed like that, not a way to really convince a jury that you really have facts on your side either. So
They went upstairs to the bedroom. About an hour later, you'll hear evidence that Mr. Walshe got up, went back down the stairs to clean the kitchen. You'll see evidence that he looked at his email. You'll hear evidence that he then returned to the bedroom, intending nothing more than to crawl into bed with Anna Walshe, the woman he loved. When he entered the bedroom and began to get into the bed, he sensed something was wrong. You will hear evidence that it made no sense to him. But he nudged Anna, his wife. She didn't respond. He nudged her again, a little harder. She didn't respond. He nudged her now in a frantic and panic reaction to where she actually rolled off the bed.
no, nudging someone that's dead, they don't roll off the bed. You'd have to physically shove them off the bed. They said she was, what was it, 5'2", 115. So if she's dead, rigor mortis is setting in if it's been any length of time. And guess what? You know right away if something's serious enough. What's your automatic reaction going to be if that's your wife who you love, as they're claiming had a good relationship? Guess what? You're going to call 911.
You'll hear evidence that now he is panicking and he doesn't understand what has happened and what is happening.
Okay, well, if it's something that's a natural causation, then you call 911 because medical folks wouldn't be able to figure it out and give her the chance to survive if she isn't dead yet.
It didn't make any sense to him.
Yeah. She's not responsive. Right away, you call 911. I mean, that's anybody knows that. A little kid knows that.
It didn't make sense that somebody that he had just been with and enjoyed New Year's Eve into New Year's Day would suddenly be dead. Not easy. You will hear evidence in this case of sudden, unexplained death. You will hear evidence that it is rape. You will hear evidence that it happens in young people
Rare,
and
not
old.
rape, but
You
rare.
will hear evidence it happens in male and female. You will hear evidence it happens during the day and during the night, that it happens. The trained athletes. You will hear evidence that it can be the result of both mechanical and or electrical problems within the body. You will hear evidence that it might be cardiovascular, pulmonary, neurological, or other reasons.
Yeah.
You will hear evidence that it occurs in people who have never manifested a symptom that something might be wrong. And in fact, you will hear evidence that sometimes the first manifestation that something is or was wrong with someone is the sudden, unexplained. That's the evidence you will hear from this. Sudden, unexplained death is known within the medical community and the forensic community. But it is to this day not well understood, and that is the evidence you will hear. And it is not well known to non-medical professionals. And you will hear evidence. Brian Walshe never imagined someone suddenly die. 1 hour he's with her, he cleans the kitchen, he comes back up, and she is dead. You will hear evidence in this case that Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe loved each other. Yes, there was stress in the marriage. Stress born out of a simple problem that took its toll. And that's the pending federal case that had begun in 2018 and was still going forward. And what happened was, over time, Anna Walshe got a job in DC with the support of Brian Walshe. It was a huge stepping stone in her career. It paid twice the salary. And they talked about it. You will hear evidence that they had to make a decision. Brian could not leave Cohasset because of the pending federal case. So who would take care of the children? While Anna worked in DC, Brian would. And he did. There was stress in commuting back and forth between DC and Cohasset. Brian Walshe experienced that stress too. And Anna Walshe and him they talked about it on Christmas Day of 2022. And that's what the evidence will be. Yes, there was an affair. You will hear evidence of an affair. An affair does not make someone a bad person, does not make someone a bad mother. Make no mistake about that. But yes, there was an affair, not between Brian Walshe and Anna, but between Anna Walshe and William Dassler.
Common motive for murder, though, right?
The evidence in this case will be that Anna Walshe did everything she could to hide that affair.
Like I said, I think the pacing isn't good, but he doesn't have a lot to work with, and he's doing the right thing of being passionate about his argument. Is that his argument's really missing a whole lot of details, and he's missing a whole lot of points of common sense. So that's what I think. He's got nothing to work with, but all right, Ms. D thinks he's very good. Yeah, I mean he's making it not drag on too long here, so that's probably the best thing he's doing, other than the fact that he's not reading from a script.
She did not tell her closest friends, her confidants, some of whom lived in DC, the same person, Alyssa Kirby, that she spent December 29th with, drinking and talking about her life. She hid this. William Dassler will tell me that he was unaware of any plans of Anna ever telling Brian about the affair. William Dassler will testify that they behaved differently in public. in DC to make sure there was no appearance of the affair. William Pastor will testify that Anna Walshe told him she would be devastated if Brian ever learned about the affair.
Right
Brian
there.
Walshe.
Yeah. So this mere suspicion could set him off as well. Is that right, counselor?
Didn't know about the affair.
If he didn't really
did
know?
Anna Walshe had a crush on William Pastor because she told him. And he did not react in a jealous way.
Then why is he looking up divorce? Doing searches for divorce? You're not making any sense.
And you will hear evidence that over the close to decade that these two people were in love. And all you have to do is look at the evidence and the photograph you'll see of Anna Walshe. And the evidence will establish she is a beautiful woman. And it was not unusual for her to comment to Brian, I had some man look at me today. I think he liked her. That didn't upset Brian, not over a period of 10 years. And when she told him that she had a crush on William Fastow, the man who had sold them the $1.3 million townhouse in DC, it didn't upset Brian. He trusted her.
He trusted her? Okay.
In fact, you will hear evidence from Melissa Kirby that Anna Walshe told her, I wish you would be jealous. You will hear evidence that there was no financial issues or problem. Anna Walshe just got that job in the early part of 2022 that paid close to $300,000 a year. They own that townhouse in DC. It was worth over $1 million. They own whole life insurance policies on their sons in the amount of $1 million each. Whole life that you will hear you can borrow against if you need cash. You will hear evidence that Brian Walsh's mother gifted them money, and actually you'll hear from the landlord of the home that they were living in at the time that Brian was living in, taking care of the three boys while Anna worked in DC, that it was his mother who was paying the rent, because that's what grandmothers do. There was no financial problems here. They owned investment property in Massachusetts.
That's weird, but he's renting a house and his grandma's paying for it. So if he's going to prison and she divorces him, gets full custody of the kids, life insurance gets canceled, he's got nothing. Then he's going to have to start paying child support. So this looked like to him the best option financially. Get rid of her, and wow, what a sick guy this Brian.
The evidence in this case is that Brian Walshe loved Anna Walshe. You will hear that she spoke of him in glowing terms to William Fastow. That she said, I want people to see the Brian that I know.
Then why was she cheating on him? What was going on? Something was going on there. It's not this loving relationship you're making it out to be, counsel.
You will hear how she talked about her relationship with Brian with Alyssa Kirby. And notwithstanding the fact that Anna Walshe was having an affair, she described their relationship as open and honest. He believed their marriage was open and honest because he loved her. You will hear how she described Brian as her best friend to her friend Alyssa Kirby. You will also see evidence of text messages that you may use to determine for yourself if there was love between these two individuals. The importance about those text messages that you'll see is simply that they're dated. The ones you'll see are dated beginning December 25th of 2022, 7 days before New Year's Day. In 1225, Anna Walsh and Brian Walsh are texting each other, and she is sending him 7 properties, listings, primarily out of Zillow, 7 listings of properties in the greater DC area, Bethesda, Annapolis. They're searching for future investment property. You'll see that, and you'll hear evidence that then she comes up to celebrate Christmas with Brian and their 3 beautiful boys. You'll see on 12/27, now that she's back in DC, these text messages between them. And they're talking about one of their properties. And they're talking about the fact that it, in fact, sold. So now they need to figure out what to do with the proceeds. You'll see on 12/28, text exchange between Brian Walsh and Anna Walsh. Now, she's back in DC. She's not feeling well. She's telling Brian, I don't feel well. So I'm going to stay at home and work at home today in DC. And they joke. And on the text, Brian says something like, well, I guess I'll have to get you a plunger. And Anna responds, I'll tell you what. I'll buy the plunger. You buy me that Porsche. Why? Because Anna Walsh wanted the Porsche. And what you see on that text exchange, right after she says that, is you'll see postings that he sent to her of the Porsches he'd been shopping for the women he loved.
Grandma's paying the rent and they're looking for Porsches. There's something wrong with that picture.
And you'll see in his network that he was shopping for Porsches because she had asked for one. On 12/29, you'll see a text exchange between them where they're talking about a 3-story brownstone that she had found that maybe they'll buy for an investment. And you'll see the text references to how much it costs, the square footage it's up and below. You'll see text exchange between them where they're talking about possible renovations in the future. They are talking about the future. And this is on 12/29.
He's a convicted federal felon, so how are they going to get money to swing that?
And then on 12/30, simple texts between them about her catching her flight from DC to get to Cohasset for New Year's. She texts him, I've landed. You know what you see in those text messages? She begins to send Brian pictures of her playing with the boys. Now that she's reunited with the 3 beautiful boys again. And then you see 7 pictures sent by Brian Walsh back to Anna, taken of her playing with the boys. And how do they sign off these texts? You'll see them. Brian says, love you. And Anna Walsh says, love you too. We've come full circle in this opening, and now we're back to New Year's Eve. And Jim Mutlow, a family friend, is invited by Anna to come to the house to celebrate New Year's Eve. You'll hear evidence that he was thrilled. He was thrilled to be with 2 people he'd known for years, but he hadn't seen in some time. He knew their kids, 3 beautiful boys. He'll describe how when he drove up in the driveway, Anna Walsh ran down the driveway in her heels, no coat, on a cold winter day to hug him. And then what happened? They all went into the house. And what was occurring in the house? Brian was cooking New Year's. He was feeding them as they all talked for 4 to 5 hours. And what were they talking about? They were talking about the future. They were talking about investments. Anna Walsh told a story about how Brian had found a ring for her and the whole adventure of finding the ring and buying the ring. She talked about it in glowing terms when she talked about how Brian did that. Mr. Mutlow will describe that for the 4 or 5 hours that he was there, he saw no problems between them. Said that Brian was happy and Anna was happy.
He described the atmosphere as jovial.
Festive. He described it as loving.
All right. You know, he's not bringing up anything about going to Home Depot, buying the list of things that pretty much are routine for someone committing a murder. Are you going to talk about that, Mr. Tipton?
As adults do for New Year's Eve, they celebrated with wine and champagne. You will have that box, or at least photographs of that champagne box, where they signed it.
You know how many people are convicted based on video footage going to Home Depot or Lowe's? I mean, it's astounding. So many cases, especially spousal murder cases. It's like, are these people that clueless? Those places are just loaded with security cameras. You got millions and millions of dollars of inventory that they don't want people walking out of there with. The parking lots are covered with cameras. They're trying to get license plates and all that. This guy thinks he can pull this off, going there. They got cameras all over the checkout lines, and he probably paid for it on the credit card and all that. So,
And what Anna signed on that box, she wrote, "Let's make 2023 the best one yet." She went on to say, courage, love, perseverance, compassion, joy, and signed it, love.
while she cheating on with another guy, I mean, that makes no sense.
Nothing was more important to both Anna and Brian but those 3 beautiful words. They had talked about the problem
Yeah.
of the federal case. It was stressful. When you heard in the Commonwealth Open the reference to a divorce search, please understand that the other evidence will be that that singular search occurred between conversations between Anna and Brian about the sale of their property. You'll see that that search occurred about 8:30 on 12/27. And why is that important? The evidence will show that the only time Anna Walsh talked about divorce with William Fastow, she talked about it in terms of Brian and I attempting to preserve the family assets. Why is that important? Because yes, there was $400,000 of restitution that was going to come due. And yes, Brian may have had to go to prison for some time. And what did that mean? It meant that there was going to have to be arrangements, not just to pay the money, which wasn't going to be a problem, but the boys had to move up to DC because Brian could no longer take care of them. And there would be all that added expense. And they went so far as to talk to Robin Howe, their nanny, their babysitter, and asked her if she would consider moving up. So there were expenses. So when you talk about preserving the family assets, you have to decide, how is it that I make sure, how is it, as Brian Walsh will tell you, how is it that I make sure that my wife and my 3 sons are financially secure if I have to go to prison for a day, for a week, for a month, or for a year? That's what they were talking about. And in all of the other...
He's worried about their financial security. Then why are you doing those frauds with the Andy Warhol paintings, Mr. Brian Walsh? Basically, everybody's supporting him. He's not worried about how he's going to provide for his family. It's a little late when you're awaiting sentencing on your federal case.
Digital data that the Commonwealth has been poring over for 2 years, you will not hear evidence of any other connotation of the word. And you won't hear it from William Fasto. In fact, William Fasto will tell you he had resigned himself to think Anna Walsh was never going to be the father of the children. Jim Mutlow left around 1:30. Ryan Walsh and Anna Walsh went upstairs. He went back down to the kitchen about an hour later to clean it up. And then the impossible, the unimaginable happened. It didn't make sense to Ryan Walsh. It was confusing. He never thought anybody would believe that Anna Walsh was alive 1 minute and dead the next. And all he could think about were those 3 boys. What would happen to their 3 boys now that Anna is no longer here? What will happen if they think he did something bad to Anna? Where will those 3 boys
Why would they think that? If she dies suddenly, they could do an autopsy and find out what it was. Very simple.
go? And so, he told the story. He told lies. He tried to hide so he could hang on to those boys.
Okay, what about dismembering Anna's body? Trying to avoid that, aren't you? Are you going to get to that here?
Ryan Walsh never killed me. Ryan Walsh never thought about killing me. He would never think about it. Ryan Walsh is not guilty.
Sirs, once again, why don't you stand up, shake a leg?
All right, well,
15 minutes before the break.
all right, that was very much a bizarre opening for the defense, but they don't have a lot to work with on this one, guys. It's very much a case that I agree with some of the comments here. It looks like they're shooting for second degree instead of first degree. That shows some premeditation, but premeditation can start in a second. A second can be the amount of time for premeditation. So, yeah, he is holding a rosary. It looked like I saw that from another video earlier. So, you're saying no lesser charge will be offered. A lot of it is going to be decided after the close of the evidence. So the prosecution, I think, would be foolish if they try to stop a second degree murder instruction. Could they have other charges that are lesser included apply? If they wanted to, they could. But I think that in this particular case, the evidence is, it's either first or second degree. I don't see a whole lot of lesser includeds that the prosecution needs to worry about. I mean, when you look at this guy, what he's done, what they got their receipts on, they got him on video going and doing these things. They got these searches, as the web searches, him going to Home Depot, him going to the dumpster near his mom's place, and then finding Anna's DNA on the hacksaw. I mean, that's gruesome details. This guy is a sociopath monster. The jury gets that now, and I think the jury's, realizing it's not a case of who done it. We got to try to figure out who done it. It's not that at all. It's just the thing that looks like the relationship was unraveling, and he snapped. Maybe she told him divorcing him, and he's the one that was desperate to save it. When he realized he couldn't, he took it out on her and says, I'm not going down financially and every which way with losing custody of the boys, probably having zero access to the boys for the future years based on him going to federal prison. So he just decided to take matters in his own hands and show the extreme hatred towards Anna and also towards his boys. So I just it's just so bewildering to think somebody can take the lives of your children's mother. That's just so mind-boggling. And now what's the boys, how are they supposed to do what their mom did and their dad facing life behind bars? Yeah, I can see why they didn't offer him a plea. I mean, make him plead to first-degree murder. They got such damning evidence against him. Granted, there's not a lot of evidence of the premeditation per se, but if they can show that they had relationship troubles beforehand, issues about the life insurance, if he was trying to push for a higher life insurance amount, things of that nature, that can show that there was some premeditation involved. How do we know that he didn't know about the affair? That was actual affair, not just this issue of the realtor down in DC having some interest in Anna. So Fletcher, boy, you're saying he could sue for alimony after his incarceration is completed. Yeah, between being a federal convict and all that kind of stuff, I just don't see he's not been contributing to financially to the marriage at all. So why would he get alimony if he's been sandbagging on being gainfully employed to the extent that he's providing a lot of means to support the family? So let's talk about the Porsche. Yeah, really, really strange behavior. Sharon, you're saying he panicked and did that? At a minimum, it's second degree, but just the degree he went to try to dismember her and all that. You suddenly think that up after you have a moment of rage. I don't know. He could have looked at those kind of searches before he killed her, but so in that sense, they could argue that the defense could argue, well, see, there was none of those searches happened until after the prosecution tried to say she was killed. So, but they're saying he had nothing to do with it as a natural cause death. But the fact that, like I say, he was searching for how to dispose of a body after a murder, that right there is a confession, right? Right there, 100%. Then you can dispose of a body and lie to the police if you had nothing to do with it. And this is just a natural cause death. Yeah, I think he probably knew about the affair more than what they're letting on. Marta Cubio, with Anna allowing him to be a stay-at-home dad, was that so the court would not put him in jail till his trial for the Andy Warhol issue? Well, he didn't have a trial. He already pled out, and he was waiting sentencing. So I'm sure that was a pitch made while he was given a ankle monitor, ankle bracelet, hey, I'm 100% stay at home dad, trying to take care of the boys so my wife can keep her highly successful job going down there between Boston area and DC area. Law and Lit, yeah, the jury believed Robert Durst's excuse for why he dismembered his neighbor's body. Hopefully that doesn't happen here. I'm sure they're familiar with that case as well. They've looked into that. I do not recall what the justification was, the excuse was for that. Yeah, John Smith. I don't know if he hired a PI to find out about the affair, but my instincts are he found out about it. Maybe she just told him, "Hey, I'm not in love with you. I want to date somebody else." And all went downhill after that. Marty, you're saying he did. You believe he knew about the affair? Brian called William Festo to see if he knew where she was. Another time, they were at dinner, and Brian called William, and then he claimed his son called by accident. Yeah, so he was highly suspicious, if outright completely aware. As you're saying, she sent a pic to William New Year's Eve, and you think Brian saw it. Something like that's probably how it went down. And mom hired a PI to trail Anna Walsh, perhaps. Yeah, most of y'all saying you believe it. He had knowledge about the affair. Yeah, I agree. Best way to prove natural cause is an autopsy with an intact body. None of this makes sense. Why would you believe she's dead as well? If she's not breathing, he called 911 right away. What was he doing to try to resuscitate her? Think about it. She wasn't up there for very long. If he's down there getting the kitchen cleaned up, how long is that going to take? Not very long. Even if it's a half an hour. She's not going to give her any chance of having EMT show up and treat her. Yeah, that's a good point, Chris. An innocent person calls 911, doesn't start Googling how to dispose of a body that's murdered. Yeah, it is very insulting. Yeah, I think she got there later too. She's driving up from DC New to Boston. That's a long trip. A very long trip. Okay. I mean, it's like 4.5 hours from New York to Boston by car in the interstate. You're talking from DC to New York. You're talking about another several hours. So yeah, it's probably about easily an 8-hour car drive is my guess off the top of my head. So I think that's about right. Been that evening. Kayla, exactly. Her body must have shown evidence of what he did. When he buys a hatchet and a hacksaw. because he's scared and that's what he thought he needed to do to show his innocence. No, sorry. Yeah, this is very tragic, especially for the young kids. Not just 2 boys, but we got 3 in this particular case. Yeah, Evelyn, you're saying she wasn't home for Christmas Eve. She wasn't working. Brian knew. Okay, was the bad weather? Flights couldn't make it. Well, then why could you drive if there's bad weather? Yeah, I don't think anybody believes this guy's story. Sorry. Okay, Marty, you're saying you heard the flight was canceled due to an accident in the airport. But then, okay, so were there multiple flights canceled? You weren't going to get out for a number of hours? That's a long drive to make. But I guess if that's the only way you can get up there, even fly, even fly to some other city. If you have to fly DC to New York and then drive to Boston area, that would make more sense. Get there quicker. Yeah, and it was snowing. That's just none of this really adds up as being a smart move. So we haven't gotten to see what kind of demeanor he has, but I can tell you the jury would be looking at him a lot on this case when the attorneys are up there and making their pitches. So he's holding that rosary thing. From my experience, that does not go across well with jurors, and that's what they think guilty people do. So if he thinks that's helping him, then it's not. He's hoping some of the jurors have same beliefs as him and have sympathy on him. No, it's not gonna happen. I don't see it happening. So I see second degree at a minimum, but I can easily see him going down on first degree. All right, trial channel, you're saying it's 7-hour, 15-minute drive. Christmas Day may be quicker, but only by so much. There's not as much traffic, and then if it's snowy as well, if is it a light dusting or is it a heavy snow? I'm not tracking that, but keep in mind there was an issue of his sanity to stand trial. That Nisha's trial was going to be held up because of that a couple months ago, I remember. So let me show you all something here. Let's jump to his. This is his federal conviction in the U.S. District Court. So he was sentenced today. So it's February 20th of 24 with a years-long multifaceted art fraud scheme involving 2 purported Andy Warhol paintings. So he was 49th time of sentencing, in order to pay restitution of $475. He was sentenced to 37 months in prison and 3 years of supervised release. In April 21, so that's before the murder, the following year, he pled guilty to 1 count of each wire fraud, interstate transportation for a scheme to defraud an unlawful money transaction. So he's a fraudster, a con man, a fraudster, trying to sell 2 Warhol paintings on eBay. I mean, if you really had Warhol paintings, you're not going to put it on eBay. So he puts in his own name, a picture of the invoice for the 2 Warhols shadow paintings. He said he bought it for $240,000. The buyer believed they were authentic. Arranged to buy them for $80,000. So they paid the $80,000, flew there. I was deposited that day to Walshe. Walshe's account, and $33K was withdrawn in the 14 days following. Then the buyer finds the frames and no Warhol Foundation authentication stamps. And the canvases and staples look new. So the photographs and the paintings did not line up. So he realized they weren't authentic. Anyway, so this guy was out on supervised release, so with the ankle monitor. Sometime this month still, I'll circle back to the Florida case I've been covering extensively. Yeah, so that's what I can tell you. It's like a jury is going to not be fooled by this guy. So he's already convicted con artist, and so he's going to try to con the jury as well. They're going to see through that, just like he's trying to con them with the rosary. Yeah, he's attempting to appear pious. True people of faith will see right through it. Whether it's a person of faith or not, I just can tell you, people acting that way, like they're super spiritual and really crying out for help to God, that it's all manipulation. If it's really sincere, it's not done showboating like that. From my experience, we're not seeing that on cases. If I was his defense counsel, I'd have a talk about that as well. Okay, Miriam, you're saying Anna, you think Anna lied about the flight on Christmas. She said it was canceled, but it wasn't. She was with her lover instead of her kids and husband on those days. Yeah, if that was the case, but yet, Marianne, you're saying it was canceled due to snow. I don't know which it was, but she did make it up there. Very late, though. You're telling me that he wouldn't have been upset about that if she did roll in at 8 o'clock, something at night? Okay, Lon, you're saying he got rid of the rosary after day 1. Okay. Neverly, you're saying, well, where were the three boys while he's doing what he's doing upstairs sleeping? Let that sink in. Yeah, that's unbelievable cruelty. And stuff straight out of the pits of hell. Yeah, the thing about him not jealous. Okay, really? So what would have happened if he would just called 911, EMS would have showed up, tried to resuscitate Anna, and if they had determined she was, I don't think they make the determination that somebody's dead. They keep trying to resuscitate them and rush them to the hospital the whole way, and they'd have found out after an autopsy she died of natural causes. Nothing would have happened to this guy. Yeah. All right, Marianne, you're saying there's a Boston Magazine article about Walsh 2023. Carlos Stewart, that's a good question. How can the court allow an unexplained death without an autopsy being performed? So he's declaring her to be dead and he didn't know of any reason why. So I think because of the fact that it is a medical phenomena that they can just say, well, his belief of this is not possible, that he would then somehow turn that into, like, since it's not possible to just drop dead at somebody at 39, that therefore it must have been a murder. Why would they think that if everything was going great in their relationship? It's just so absurd. All right, so let's see here. Yeah, I know anything about his dad, him not speaking for 10 years because some con issue there. Wouldn't surprise me though. He's probably a career con man. Has just finally caught up with him. Alex Perkins, no one alive would hack up their spouse no matter what unless they hated them and were nuts. So, well, you wouldn't hack up anybody unless you are a complete demonic evil person, absolutely nuts. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I'm not sure about what day I'm going to cover this, but I will be covering this in the next couple weeks for the Adelson case down in Florida. Not happy that we haven't seen any progress Very disappointing. We'll talk about that. I said that essentially I gave current prosecution down there, if they don't do something by the end of December, then they probably are waiting for something else to happen. They probably will decided not to move forward unless they get something else, like an Adelson flipping on another or something like that. But I sure hope that's not it. We need to have aggressive, tough prosecutions. And that's what you don't have down there. Because the guy at the top's holding the bag. Yeah, so I guess it's been reported he stole $1 million from his dad, who's a neurosurgeon. I'm not tracking that, but well, if you, as a prosecutor, if you don't believe you can get a conviction because you don't have the skill set or don't know how to evaluate evidence, and you let somebody else do it, then get somebody else. I have zero doubts I could get a conviction if I was a prosecutor on the case against Wendy Adelson. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and sign off, folks. You all have a great week. More to follow in this case. I'm going to cover it sporadically, so not going to cover it all day. I don't have the bandwidth to do that, but I will periodically check in, give us some analysis as the case is going on. This could take up to a month. So after this case, there's a case that's supposed to kick off in January up in Arkansas of the guy that killed the guy that was molesting his daughter. There's actually a San Antonio case that Leslie and I have been looking at here. This one is really another slam dunk win for the prosecution, where a lot of efforts were made by the husband to do the same kind of thing, going to Home Depot, getting all the tools he needed to dispose of the body, and they don't have the body of his wife, also mother of 3 kids. So a very, very tragic case. So I got to see if they're going to allow cameras in the courtroom for that one. So I would like to cover that as well. But if there's another case you guys think I should cover, go ahead and let me know. I know somebody mentioned one in Michigan at the beginning of this in the chat. I had not heard of that before. So I'll circle back and check that out as well. But other than that, y'all have a great week. Be safe, and talk to you soon. Good night.